So Moises Caicedo did an interview recently that actually showcased a problem that he had with Maurizio Pochettino, indicating that under the former Chelsea head coach, Chelsea players had to run a lot, and this actually contributed to him not performing quite well initially in the beginning of the season. Now, this performance also happened to hinder Enzo Fernandez's performance in the team. And in our video today, we are going to try and look at the first part of the video, why Caicedo and Enzo are going to succeed under Enzo Maresca, and why did they actually fail under Pochettino. So when we look at how Caicedo played under De Zerbi, it showcased a player who was so world class. In big clubs such as Arsenal were also in for him. But at Chelsea initially, he was not quite great, but actually looked to improve as the season progressed. Now, looking at this clip here, you can see that Moises Caicedo was fond of coming short, coming deep to receive the ball, and looking to actually try and play towards his opponents. And Caicedo's gameplay was possession-based, looking to have the ball and help his team. Caicedo was press resistant, he was situationally aware, and actually described that his time at Brighton, it was more tactical than his time at Chelsea, indicating the slight tactical variations and procedures that Maurizio Pochettino and De Zerbi used. And you can see further from this clip that Caicedo knew wherever he would pass the ball, there is a player. And this is something that Maresca is going to introduce at Chelsea. But before we start, I'd like you to introduce you to our new sponsor.
Sports. Bet on sports with Lime Bets.
Be sure to check the promo code in the description area below in this video and actually see how you can be able to make a lot of money through our sponsor. Use my promo code MMA. Do not also forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Now, I want to explain to you why these two players did not perform and why Pochettino's run system did not facilitate this. And I'd like you to listen to this short video as I explain how this happened. Passes progressive while Enzo was 67, making Enzo a more offensive player. But when you look at ball recoveries, Moises Caicedo beats Enzo Fernandez because he has 63 compared to Enzo Fernandez 26. And this showcases how he's more defensive. But short creation passes, Enzo Fernandez beats him, meaning that one would have been more defensive while the other would have been more an attacking, creative box-to-box midfielder. Now, when you look at the complementary graphs of the two players, one thing that you can easily not fail to see is the final third entries. And you can see that Enzo Fernandez has that in high, and Caicedo has most ball recoveries and most interceptions, indicating again that this is a defensive midfielder with a number 8. But why is it not working? And the first area we're going to look at is without the ball, because both of them have been good in possession, but the problem has been without possession. And without possession, we are going to look at how they try to win the ball, and that is Maurizio Pochettino's high press. We're going to look at how these teams coordinate the high press and how both midfielders move with regards to these high press systems. Now, Chelsea look to press their opponents higher up the pitch, and when opponents are trying to build from the back, what you will normally see is that one midfielder will spring out from the number 10 position and immediately join Nicholas Jackson in the press as they try to go man-to-man with the back line. Now, the situation is the role of Enzo and Caicedo, because one of them actually springs forward from the midfield position to pick up the deepest midfielder to prevent the ball from being played in midfield. But Chelsea's press is not well coordinated. And this is how Chelsea usually fail to win these duels. And how does this even happen? Now, Moises Caicedo is usually left to try and cover two midfielders, that is the opposition's number 8 and number 10. Now, the problem here is that the Chelsea's backline and attacking line act as two blocks when they are pressing. There is a higher block and a lower block. Now, what happens is that the midfield is the one that suffers, because the midfield is now tasked to be the one that covers a lot of distances. And this is where problems start to emerge because midfielders drop deep, immediately receive the ball because one midfielder is usually overloaded trying to mark two players because Chelsea's backline does not push forward to compress this space in midfield. And because if the backline pushed forward, a centre back will step out or a fullback to try and help the midfielder, what happens is that Caicedo is usually left isolated in midfield. And this is what makes Chelsea bypass Caicedo easily, and this has resulted in Moises Caicedo committing a lot of fouls this season because he has to stop the attack from proceeding towards the last line of defense. The pressing high up the pitch is well coordinated, but the backline not pushing forward is creating a lot of problems. Now look at how Chelsea are pressing. Jackson and Conor Gallagher are pushing forward. Enzo Fernandez has already stepped from midfield, looking to already push onto Fulham's deepest pivot. But Moises Caicedo is now being tasked to look after two midfielders in the pitch. Now, Mauricio Pochettino had adapted this by playing Chelsea in a narrow 4-2-3-1 system. But the problem with this narrow block is that they have horizontal compatibility but not vertical. Now, how does this affect the two players when they are building from the back? Now, the problem is when Chelsea are pressing, again, their forward and backline acts as two blocks, and the distances between the forward line and the backline are usually huge. And this is where problems start to emerge because now teams start to play around Chelsea. The centre backs spread out wide and play almost as fullbacks. And what happens is that the fullbacks also stretch high up the pitch, the way Liverpool were actually playing against Chelsea. And now the midfield is the one that has to leave the midfield region to come and cover these spaces in the wide regions. And how does this affect the structure of the midfield? So if a midfielder drops to receive the ball in this kind of position, the two midfielders will have to shift because one of them cannot shift while the other sits in midfield because now a forward can drop to occupy that position. So both of them shift to try and mitigate that overload that has been created. Now, when one midfielder already shifts to try and mitigate this overload, what happens is that now spaces have already been created in midfield, and this leaves acres of space that can be exploited with wingers or midfielders or fullbacks coming to occupy these positions. And a quick shift of play can really expose Chelsea's other side to vulnerabilities and weaknesses, as we saw in the game against Spurs, that if a fullback comes in, then a winger can be played in. Now, Chelsea are pressing Tottenham, but they're pressing Tottenham in a narrow 4-2-3-1 system. Now, Tottenham have identified Chelsea's weakness in that Chelsea are creating a central overload, and Tottenham can actually play around Chelsea. So how can Tottenham do this? Now, James Maddison, being an intelligent player, drops from one position, picks the ball, pings the ball onto Pedro Porro, who's occupied that midfield position, who lays the ball towards the runs of Kulusevski. Now, when Kulusevski is receiving the ball in this kind of position, what you see is that, and what you expect is that Kulusevski to immediately make those runs. Now, let's try and do some analysis on how this is detrimental for Chelsea and how having these gapping holes between the front line and the back line is creating a lot of problems for the midfield, making midfielders cover huge positions. Now, when Chelsea revert to be pressing in a 4-4-2 with Conor Gallagher joining Jackson, especially when they are trying to press a wide centre backs who have split wide, what happens again is the two midfielders who have to come forward, one of them to cover the two midfielders high while the other has to sit deep. Now, if the backline had pushed forward, this would have been easier. But because Chelsea's backline is not ready, especially Disasi and Thiago Silva, are not quite comfortable playing high because they will leave spaces in behind, and they are not comfortable whether Petrovic can step out to cover these spaces, though Petrovic can. What happens is that the spaces now are compensated by creating a huge hole in midfield. So what happens when this huge hole is formed in midfield? We have two blocks. We have an attacking block that is pressing high, and we have a defensive block that is staying deep. Now, the problem now is this picture that we see here. Players have pushed forward to press Liverpool. Caicedo is left in midfield to cover those acres of space by himself, but you cannot see Chelsea's backline. You cannot see Chelsea's backline pushing forward to give Caicedo that assurance that we are also behind here to protect you. But now Caicedo is being put in a 2v1 situations. Brentford also exposed this when Chelsea tried to press them high because they were going directly to Ivan Toney, who would immediately receive the ball directly from the goalkeeper and look to lay the balls for the two midfielders who are playing behind Enzo Fernandez. Now, when the two midfielders receive the ball, they immediately win the second balls over Caicedo, and now Brentford has 5 players running at Chelsea's back four. Compare this with Manchester City. Look at the way Manchester City are pressing Liverpool. Haaland has already joined to press Virgil van Dijk. De Bruyne is already pressing Joe Gomez, while Doku is ready to spring out to press Kwanzaa. But look at Manchester City's backline. It has pushed forward, and therefore the distance between Erling Haaland and Akanji, who's playing as the centre-back, is small. Now, Chelsea's other problem is in possession. Mauricio Pochettino's possession strategy is not looking quite well for Chelsea because Chelsea are creating overloads, yes, and players are creating solutions for their own problems on the pitch. But Mauricio Pochettino's tactical philosophy, especially in attack, cannot work in the current Premier League setup because it leaves a lot of gaping holes when the team is trying to attack. And I'm going to tactically explain to you how this happens. And this is how this happens. Now, when Chelsea is stifling teams in the defensive third, what will happen is Cole Palmer will automatically pick up the right half space position. So Gallagher is the one who's supposed to pick up the left half space position. But again, this is where the problem is because the midfield is usually disjointed. At least you need 2 midfielders to be occupying that position. But Pochettino wants both his fullbacks to push forward. And also, other than both his fullbacks pushing forward, he also wants one of his pivots in Enzo Fernandez to also change his position on the pitch and look to push forward. Now, when Gusto has already pushed forward, we expect Gallagher to occupy the left half space channel. But what happens is that Pochettino wants Enzo Fernandez to use his late entries in the box to push forward high up the pitch. We've seen Enzo's goals increase, but the problem is rather than Gallagher dropping deep to help Caicedo, what happens is that now Chelsea are left in a vulnerable position with Caicedo being the only player in midfield. So what happens now is that you have a lot of players overloading the opposition backline, but you only have 2 center backs who are also playing deeper with a central midfielder who's supposed to cover all the spaces left. This is a problematic because now there are acres of space that only one player is supposed to cover, and it's creating a snowball effect because when the ball is lost in these higher regions of pressure, what happens is now the opposition is able to transition from their defensive third to effectively attack to center backs, meaning that the backline is well exposed and can easily be exploited. An example is this game against Liverpool. You can see that Chelsea are committing many players forward. You can see even the position of Enzo Fernandez is that he's also almost playing like the attacking midfielder high up the pitch. Conor Gallagher is also high up the pitch. But the problem now is Caicedo is the one who's supposed to cover these spaces. Now, Chelsea lose possession. And look at where Caicedo and Enzo are. Caicedo is high. Enzo is high. Chilwell is high. Gusto is now tracking back, and Caicedo has to cover that space and cover the 2 center backs. And this is where the problems usually start for Chelsea. Now, in this other clip is where you'll see the huge problem at Chelsea. Look at Chelsea's attacking structure. Caicedo is playing in between the 2 center backs, but there are no midfielders on the right side. Now, if Gallagher will play with Caicedo as the 2 midfielders, allowing Sterling, Palmer, and Chilwell to attack, they will easily disjoint Manchester City. But this is creating a sense of vulnerability for Chelsea because if Manchester City is able to intercept the ball in these kinds of instances, then they are immediately running at Disasi when he is by himself. And these are some of the tactical problems that Mauricio Pochettino has failed to address, especially at his time at Chelsea. And this is the Now the question is, can Enzo Maresca actually establish his positional play tactical philosophy that is able to bring the best out of these two players. Remember, these two players are so important for Chelsea in that they are Chelsea's most important player, and Chelsea need to work extremely hard to get the best out of them. But in a possession-based system where you do not expect Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo to do the usual running that they are not quite good at, you expect them to be much more expressed, much more dominant, and having a positional system that ensures also the counter press out of possession is effected perfectly. You're expecting Chelsea to have less injuries, Chelsea to conserve more energy, and I'm going to give you a tactical breakdown in our next part series on how Maresca will improve Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. Do sure to check this out, and also do not forget to check our promo code down the description area. If you've liked this video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.